So friends, today we will be discussing about DNB theory papers for final year DNB students, DNB theory papers for final year students. So we will discuss the first question. We will only discuss the important points regarding that particular question. For example, first question is pharmacovigilance. Pharmacovigilance. Pharmacovigilance is divided into two words, that is the pharmacon and then vigilar. The pharmacon means the drug and vigilar means to look, to watch for, or it is also called vigilar. So what does it mean? It means we have to monitor the drug, we have to look for the drug, we have to see the adverse drug reaction that can occur with the drug when the drug is launched in the market. That is when the drug is in the post market surveillance, that is the when has drug is introduced into the market. After that, whatever the monitoring we are doing for the particular drug, that drug monitoring is known as the pharmacovigilance. So how we will do the pharmacovigilance? We have the mnemonic, that is the dope. First we detect any adverse drug reaction that can be seen with the particular drug after it has been launched, that is the detection. Then we assess that particular adverse drug reaction with the use of the drug, that is their assessment. Then we understand about that particular adverse drug reaction, and then we will try to prevent that particular drug reaction, that is the prevention of ADR. In this way we do the monitoring of the adverse drug reaction, and that is known as the pharmacovigilance. Then another thing you have to be remembering, that how we will you will be knowing that it is the particular drug that has caused the adverse drug reaction. And here are two new terms, that is the re-challenge and then we have the de-challenge. What does it means? It means if you stop the drug, de-challenge means if you stop the drug and the adverse drug reaction of that particular drug goes away. That is a disappear after you stop the drug, that is known as the de-challenge. And re-challenge means you reintroduce the drug, particular drug that caused the adverse drug reaction, and by introducing that particular drug, the adverse drug reaction again reappear. That is the re-challenge. So these two things will help us in identifying the particular adverse drug reaction is associated with particular drug, that is the re-challenge and de-challenge. Then we also have to know where is the monitoring of this drug adverse drug reaction. The monitoring whatever being done is being reported in India. This monitoring is being reported in various hospitals, and after that there is a particular center in India, and that center is located in Ghaziabad UP, Ghaziabad UP, and it is known as Indian Pharmacopoeia, Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission. So IPC is the center of monitoring the ADR in India. Now in the world, the monitoring is being conveyed to the center. The world, the monitoring is conveyed to the center located in Sweden. In Sweden, and the center is known as the Uppsala Monitoring Center. Uppsala Monitoring Center, where these adverse reaction are being reported. So these are the few important things about the pharmacovigilance. Pharmacovigilance is the monitoring of the drug after it has been launched into the market. The monitoring. Then how we will do the monitoring? You can remember as dope. First we detect the ADR, then we assess that ADR, then we understand that particular ADR, and we'll try to prevent that particular adverse drug reaction that occurred. Then we have various methods to find the ADR associated with particular drug. For example, de-challenge, we stop that particular drug and the adverse drug reaction goes away. And then we reintroduce the same drug, the ADR or the adverse reaction reappears, and that is known as the re-challenge. So these are the two ways we can identify the ADR of a particular drug. Then monitoring in India is done in Ghaziabad, and the center is Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission, that is the IPC, located in the Ghaziabad UP. And in the world, the reporting is being conveyed to Uppsala Monitoring Center located in Sweden. So this is about the pharmacovigilance. Then we will move on to the next question. The next question is the difference between Crigler-Najjar, Crigler-Najjar 1 and Crigler-Najjar 2, and then the Gilbert syndrome. Gilbert syndrome. Gilbert syndrome. We will see their differences now. So we will take one by one. First difference we will see about the enzyme. There is an enzyme known as UDP, glucuronide transferase. This enzyme is absent in Crigler-Najjar 1, while the activity is reduced in 2, while it is also reduced in Gilbert syndrome. This is the first difference. Then another difference is about the bilirubin levels. Bilirubin levels in 1 it is more than 20, while in Najjar 2 it is less than 20, while in Gilbert syndrome is less than 4 milligram per deciliter. Then we'll see about the connectors. Connectors is present in 1, while it is maybe present, maybe absent in type 2, while it is absent in Gilbert syndrome. Then we'll see about the response to phenobarbital. We will see the response to how these guys respond to the phenobarbital response. Here there is no response since there is no enzyme. Here there is reduction in bilirubin. Here also we can see the bilirubin being reduced after giving the therapy with phenobarbital. Then more difference we will see. Then the LFT will be normal in 1, in 2 and Gilbert also. All the 3 LFT will be normal. Then we'll see the histology on liver biopsy. We see here normal, it is also normal in type 2, but in Gilbert syndrome we see the lipofusin deposition. Then we'll see the color of the bile. Here it is colorless. Here it is colorless in type 1. Here it is pigmented color. Here it is dark in color in Gilbert syndrome. So these are the various differences between Crigler-Najjar type 1, type 2 and Gilbert syndrome. The enzyme in first absent, reduced. Here bilirubin is more than 20, in type 2 is less than 2, in Gilbert is less than 4 bilirubin level. Connectors is present in type 1, while is plus minus in type 2, while it is absent in Gilbert. Response to phenobarbital, there is no response in type 1, while the bilirubin reduction occur in type 2 and Gilbert syndrome. LFT is normal in all the threes. LFT is normal, while histology is abnormal in Gilbert only. There is lipofusin deposition in the liver. Then about the color of the bile, it is colorless. Here it is pigmented, and the Gilbert it is dark colored bilirubin. Now we will see the third question, which has been asked in the DNB exam. That is the question number third. That is the pathophysiology of corrosive poisoning. Pathophysiology of corrosive poisoning. Let's take. So what happens first in corrosive poisoning? There will be inflammation, then there will be granulation tissue formation, then there will be perforation, then there will be perforation of the mucosa, then there will be perforation, and in the last there will be cicatriciation or scar formation. That is the cicatriciation. So the inflammation occur in first 4 days. Then after 4 to 7 days there will be granulation tissue formation. Then from 7 to 21 days there will be perforation risk is there. Then after 21 days there will be scar formation. After 21 days. So they can also ask, this is about the pathophysiology. We can also see the coagulative necrosis in corrosive poisoning. Then you can see how they can also ask you classification of the corrosive poisoning. They have also asked the classification of corrosive poisoning. So classification is divided into, we have the acid poisons, we have the acids, then we have the alkalis, then we have the other groups. So in the acids, they are further divided into organic, then they are divided into inorganic, In the organic, we have the COF, that is the carbolic acid. Carbolic acid. Then we have the oxalic acid. Then we have the oxalic acid. And then we have the formic acid. That is the formic acid. F is formic acid. Then in the inorganic acids, we have the sulfuric acid, H2SO4. Then we have the hydrochloric acid. And then we have the nitric acid, that is HNO3. Then in the alkalis, we have the potassium hydroxide and sodium hydroxide. Potassium hydroxide and sodium hydroxide. In the other group, we have the hydrogen peroxide. We have the hydrogen peroxide, and then we have the potassium permanganate. And then we have the potassium permanganate. So this is the classification of corrosive poisoning. Then they can also ask about the Zargar classification, endoscopic. It is the endoscopic classification of after the patient has consumed the corrosive, that is the Zargar classification. This is the endoscopic findings. Endoscopic findings. We will see. Let's see what is it. There are 4 grades starting from 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So in the first grade, the mucosa of the gastrointestinal tract is perfectly normal, and in the 4th stage there will be perforation. Then in stage 1 only the superficial mucosa is involved. In stage 2 deep mucosa is involved. Plus the submucosa is also involved. In stage 3 submucosa is involved, plus there is necrosis and ulcer formation. And in stage 4 there will be perforation. So this is the Zargar endoscopic classification once the patient has taken the corrosive poisoning. This is the Zargar classification. This is the question number. This was question number 3. Then we will move on to question number 4. So in 4th question we will discuss about the neuroleptic malignant syndrome. Neuroleptic malignant syndrome. Abbreviated as NMS. Neuroleptic malignant syndrome. You remember it like this. There is a mnemonic for it, that is the Falter. So F means the patient with NMS have high grade fever. There will be altered mentation, altered sensorium will be there. Then there will be leukocytosis. Then they can have tremors. Then there will be elevated CPK enzyme. It is also seen. Then rigidity. So Falter you can remember for NMS. Then besides these features, they can also have autonomic features. In addition to the Falter, they have autonomic features. In the form of sweating, tachycardia, or there may be fluctuation in the BP, either high or low BP. These things can happen in neuroleptic malignant syndrome. Then another thing, how you are going to treat neuroleptic malignant syndrome, you can remember as bad. Neuroleptic malignant syndrome is a bad guy, where B means you are going to give bromocriptine to the patient. Then you can also give the amantadine. Then you can also give the apomorphine. Then D means dantrolene. In this way, you are going to write few words about the neuroleptic malignant syndrome that you can remember as Falter. You can remember bad for the treatment, and in addition to it, in the features you can write there are autonomic features as well. Then after this neuroleptic malignant syndrome, this is question number 4. Then we will move on to question number 5. So in this we will discuss about the transient ischemic attack. Transient ischemic attack is also being asked so many times. It is abbreviated as TIA. So few things about this. So first thing, that this attack lasts for, there is focal neurological deficit in TIA, and that lasts for less than 24 hours. If it is goes more than 24 hours, that becomes stroke. If it lasts less than 24 hours, that is the TIA. And most of the attacks usually go away within 1 hour. Most of the deficits go away within 1 hour. So these things you have to remember. In addition, you can remember it as like this. You have to do the fast, then you have to do the ABCD2 score, then you have to do the give to the patient, that is dual antiplatelet therapy. So in the fast, there will be, you have to check for the face weakness. Face weakness, that is whatever you are doing for the stroke patient, you have also do for the TIA. Then you have to look for the arm weakness. Then you have to look for the speech and slurring is there, and then time. So after doing the fast, you will do the ABCD2 score to assess the risk of stroke in near future. To assess the risk of stroke in near future, you will do the ABCD2 score. Then you will give the dual antiplatelet therapy to TIA patient with transient ischemic attacks. Then in the transient ischemic attack, you can remember few other things like the imaging, the imaging will be normal. Imaging will be normal in TIA. Imaging will be perfectly normal. There will be no bleed in TIA transient ischemic attack. And also, besides giving the dual antiplatelet therapy, can also control their lipids by giving them the statins. And some patient has high homocysteine level. For that, you can give vitamin B6, B9, B12. So this is TIA. These are the few things about TIA. So this is the part 1 of DNB theory paper lecture. We will discuss part 2 in the subsequent lectures. Thank you.